Now, World Teachers' Day falls on the first week of October every year, celebrating the efforts and impact of educators across the globe as their guidance shapes the next generation of leaders. This year, of course, it's been incredibly tough for teachers everywhere as they deal with sudden closures and reopenings of schools and are forced to adopt new teaching methods and also provide support for students and their guardians. And the challenges are set to continue as the world transitions to the new normal, where school education is unlikely to look the same. To discuss the crucial challenges that educators are facing, we connect with Jordan Figueredo, Programme Head of Health and Physical Education at a secondary school in Ontario, Canada. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Claudia Costin, Director and Founder of the Centre for Excellence and Innovation in Education Policies at an education think tank in Brazil, who was previously the Senior Director for Global Education at the World Bank. It's lovely to see you.
Great being here. Thank you.
Well, let's go straight into the discussion, starting with you, Jordan. So as a school teacher, what have been the immediate challenges that you're facing in the classroom as you switch back and forth from online learning?
So there have been a few unique challenges in my area. We have there's a virtual school, there's a hybrid model, and a face-to-face model. So in my current predicament, we're in a hybrid model, which means I am asked to teach in a face-to-face modality. So I have students physically in front of me that are cohorted into small groups, and then I also have an online responsibility as well. So the biggest concern for me and the challenge really was setting up the physical space. As a physical education teacher, honoring public health advice and COVID-19 protocols in terms of spacing, sharing of equipment, to try and make the experience authentic for students in the face-to-face modality is very, very challenging. So we've been in school now for 3 weeks, and so far the feedback has been good, but it's far different than what we knew pre-pandemic. And then the online learning has proved to be quite challenging as well. In our system, we've adapted a synchronous model of learning, which means students are working with their teachers online at the same time. So we have students at home, teachers actually in the school building still, that are providing lessons through like a Zoom or different platforms. So switching to that modality was very challenging because we didn't have much experience with it and we weren't provided all that much training. But after 3 weeks, people are getting a lot better and teachers are just adapting as they often do.
And Jordan, you're a PE teacher as well. So what kind of changes did you have to face?
So what we really had to do is make sure that our physical space was set up for people to be physically active, but still, adhering to the COVID-19 protocol. So that involved some big changes for some places. For myself at our school, we were fortunate that in our model, our students actually don't stay at school for lunch. So they go home at lunch. And what we've done is we've taken all of our fitness equipment and moved it into the cafeteria where they used to eat lunch. So we have like optimal spacing. So in a room that is, fire coded for 500, we have only 15 students in there. So we are able to utilize that space, and a lot of other schools are getting creative. In addition to that, we're trying to take our students outside as much as possible because we know that the transmission is it's less chance of catching COVID-19 if you're in an outside environment. So any chance we get, we're taking our students outside. That's for PE or non-PE classes.
So really, teachers really had to think on their feet and really react to this pandemic with very little support, it seems. And Claudia, a UN survey of 93 teachers' unions in 67 different countries shows that nearly 2/3 of teachers in private institutions were very adversely impacted by salary cuts, late payments, failure to renew contracts and payment by the hour. How has the pandemic affected educators, especially in parts of the world where public schooling systems are already relatively weak?
Well, the pandemic has affected educators in a very severe way. First, because many of them lost their jobs. In some countries, some protection was established for teachers, especially teachers that teach public schools. But the private schools don't have any protection. In my country, in Brazil, unfortunately, some of them have been already told that they are going to be fired. On the other hand, the teachers were very committed to ensure learning for their kids, no matter where they stand, because it's important to understand that in countries where you have low connectivity, where you don't have where you have a digital divide, poorer kids have to have not necessarily digital instruments, but TV or radio to keep on learning. And teachers were fantastic, going an extra mile to ensure that, even visiting homes, to ensure that their kids, that their students learn, which was amazing. But it imposed also on teachers some mental health issues, because we are still with the schools closed. They are starting to open next week in some states, but in most states, teachers are with their own kids, their children at home, and the students, they have to prepare classes for their students in a very challenging way, especially if they are from public school settings.
And Claudia, recent estimates suggest around 42% of 10-year-old children in Brazil, they lack age-appropriate comprehension skills for text, and that the pandemic could actually worsen the situation. So really, how serious is this learning poverty, as you call it, in developing countries? And what kind of tools or programs do you think are needed to really mitigate the widening gap?
Well, Brazil has, as you were just mentioning, a learning poverty, as the World Bank calls the situation there, a learning crisis, and at the same time, huge inequalities. If you look at the PISA data, it shows Brazil ranking very low in education equity, or we are the second country in education inequality. With kids staying at home for 7 months, some of them in affluent homes with parents that have a wide cultural repertoire, while others are at in poor habitation conditions with no connectivity. Things are getting, inequality is raising in an important way.
And Jordan, back in the classroom, there must have been a lot of pressure for you to really keep your students up to pace with the curriculum and also do well in your exams. Has the COVID-19 pandemic really caused educators like yourself to rethink the whole schooling system, which is mostly based on a strict curriculum and standardized tests?
Yeah, I think that conversation was happening before COVID-19, and that I think we were already starting to wonder about the legitimacy of standardized testing as it is. So COVID-19 has probably pushed the envelope even further, as Claudia was saying, in terms of the equitability of what we're doing right now. And do standardized tests really make sense in this environment? And I think it's calling to question how legitimate they truly are, pre-pandemic and even now. How legitimate are they? In our province, in Ontario, there have been a few standardized tests that have been tabled for the calendar year, but there are still a few that are going forward. It is a little bit political, and I believe that our ministry is wanting to push forward to keep wanting to see good standardized testing scores, where our unions and our teachers are providing a little bit of pushback, because we know that not everyone is on equal footing, and we're very concerned about that.
I'd love to know your thoughts about this, Claudia. I mean, with countries all over the world really grappling with this education crisis, and of course teachers fearing that their students are going to fall behind the curriculum and not be able to actually sit standardized exams. What should be done, do you think, to resolve concerns over exams, especially for students who are hoping to enter university abroad? Should there be some kind of international consensus to ensure that there's a level playing field?
Yes, I think this is the great issue that we are all facing. We shouldn't have standardized exam, at least for a while. Still, we can be able, as you mentioned, to level the playing field. We should have much more diagnostic evaluations to support the work of teachers, to prepare a school remedial education program for everyone, because we all have had losses in learning. And especially to address the issues of mental health of both teachers and students. If we put them into stress because the curriculum should be developed very quickly, all the learning losses be solved quickly, we won't help our students. So my advice would be, let's go slowly, firmly but slowly, and build some kind of remedial education for what has happened, but forget standardized tests right now.
And Jordan, in terms of going forward, how do you think this virus has really changed the role of the teacher, or what do you think rather needs to change going forward?
So I definitely think that the role of the teacher has changed, especially having been back for 3 weeks. There's a lot of demands being placed on teachers in terms of learning new pedagogy, learning new technology, how to be proficient in all these different areas that we were not proficient before necessarily in the pre-pandemic model. So synchronous lessons, for example, teachers might have had no experience doing that, and we're tasked to do that now. So I really think that we're wearing many hats. We're asked to do a lot, and as Claudia mentioned, there is that legitimate mental health burnout that is probably going to take place for many educators in my part of the world, and probably all over the world as well. And what I think we need to look at in the future is maybe having a bit more of a nuanced approach in terms of how we allocate teachers to certain assignments. My suggestion would be that we have teachers that specialize in synchronous learning, because there are some really wonderful practices that are happening, and there are students that are able to tap into that model. And then we also have some teachers that are better in the face-to-face model. So how can we prioritize and staff appropriately so that we have teachers teaching in their best lane, so to speak, and serving kids the best we can? Now, I know that's a big job, an HR job to put people in the right places, but it's probably worth it. And I think that we can make it happen with a little creativity. Saying that, we've had a call from our governing body in our province to ask retired teachers to come back to the profession. So we are going to be experiencing a shortage of teachers in our public system, which has not been the case for years. If anybody's familiar with Canadian education, it's usually hard to find a teaching job because it's well regarded. But now we're seeing a large decline, and it's probably going to get worse as we go forward. So something has to change, or else we're going to have people leaving the profession.
And Claudia, what do you think needs to change? What do you think physical schools will look like, and what roles do you think teachers will play in the new normal?
Well, first, crises are times of suffering, but also opportunities. Humanity has broken paradigms in times like the ones we are living right now. And so many things have changed, and many things have been learned by teachers, including. It's amazing to see in a country like Brazil how much the teachers have learned. They even have, we use the expression that we teachers, and I'm an university professor. I began my professional career as a classroom teacher for children, but then I became a university professor. We have been able to reinvent ourselves in a very impressive way. So what will change is that we probably will have to build on what we have learned in this time. Some of the skills that we have developed in teachers and in students, such as adaptability, openness to new experience, autonomy, are important skills for the 21st century, for the fourth industrial revolution, when we are going to compete with artificial intelligence for, let's say, jobs or work. So I think in times of change like that, the role of teacher will change, building upon what has been learned, and we will become much more learning insurers instead of a mere class providers. And we will work much more in a collaborative culture, in collaborative learning and planning, which is something very important for teachers. It's not a solo flight, we are a team in each school, and we are a team in a system of public schools.
And hopefully governments and education authorities will provide teachers with all the support they can get, as much as they are seen as the providers of education to our future generation. Well, this is where we'll have to wrap up the discussion today. That was Jordan Figueiredo and Claudia Costin joining us from Brazil and Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you as always for tuning in. Hope to have you back with us at the same time tomorrow. Until then, have a great day or evening wherever you are. Bye-bye.